Get started, I guess. Hey everyone, this is Jonathan. I'm here with Rich, and this is the Grow podcast. We are just here to have fun and share our musings. And I'm here with Rich, who's one of my dearest friends in the world. And over the last 10, 15 years, he and I have just always had these amazing conversations, and we decided, let's just record them and put them out as a podcast. So, Rich, welcome. Glad to have you here, brother. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey, hey everybody. My name is Rich Goulette. I've been in California most of my life. I'm married for over 27 years to my wife, Lisa. We've got 3 great kids together and 2 dogs. And we've just been going through life watching, our own relationships, ebb and flow and our kids grow. And so it's been exciting to be part of that. I had mostly a Catholic upbringing, and that pivoted to more of a Protestant and then evangelical delineation, where I really got fired up for God and doing some great things with some great mentors. And over the course of time, also working in the tech world, obviously got a chance to hook up with Jonathan, where we got to share ideas, conflicting thoughts, and kind of just trying to figure out the best way to make the world work and how do we make sense of it. How do we look at a variety of topics? We definitely mostly agree on a lot of things, but we also kind of, I would say, sharpen each other on other aspects as well. So, just enjoying life and trying to, make the most of it.
That's awesome, brother. So I'm Jonathan Brink, and give you a little background on myself. I am a family man. That's kind of how I would first characterize myself. I love my family. I have 6 kids, a blended family, so I'm technically a Brady Bunch. And I live in Northern California, and I am in user experience for a software company. So, which is ironic because most of my life has been about kind of discovering what does it mean to be human. And that's really what has always attracted me to Rich, is we like discussing ideas of what it means to be human, growing. We talk a lot about theology, science, business. We've had these amazing conversations around capitalism, communism, what kind of world we want to live in, what do we want to do for our kids, what is the meaning of God, all these great conversations. And I thought, what if we just put all these down into a podcast? Because I think they're interesting, and it's probably just going to be the 2 of us, but who knows, somebody else may find this valuable. So we just wanted to put it out there. So the format that we created was actually pretty simple, that we wanted to just discuss topics that we thought were valuable. And so we each came with a question that we wanted to start with. And I thought, Rich, why don't you kick things off with yours? Because yours is a fantastic question. I absolutely love your question this time because it's very deep. We're starting and kicking it into high gear today. Why don't you start off with your question, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, well, thanks, Jonathan. And, we could have started with, is drinking pH, alcohol, and high water good for you? Better than not.
It is.
And yeah, are ice baths really, really good for you? Maybe we can talk about more pragmatic things down the road.
What's the best Cabernet in the world?
Yeah.
We can talk about great things.
Exactly. I think that the thing about this point that resonated with me is, and it's exactly what Morpheus tells Neo in the Matrix, and he talks about this thing that's bothering him, that's in his mind's eye. It's a splinter. And I think that the more we look at the world, especially in a postmodern framework, where we're kind of under the purview that we know God lives out there, he's objective, but we just can't see that. The world we live in is so subjective and so dichotomous that you have to ask yourself what's really going on. And so when you look at the buildup of COVID and the idea of global warming and the idea of Ukraine, and you got the Great Reset with World Economic Forum and Davos, there just seems to be a lot of these great narratives that are coming to fruition that we don't seem to necessarily be a part of. What I'm saying is that if you look at going back to the Matrix, which I think is the best kind of fundamental understanding of, are we actually in the simulation, is you've got people on one side of the equation that know what's going on. These people live in the real world. And hopefully everybody who is watching this understands, or listening to this, understands the nature of the Matrix. Maybe we'll have to flesh that out. Jonathan, you let me know. Let's just assume. On the other side of the equation are people that live in the matrix, which is a computer programmed idea that was created by AI and machines to help them grow humans, which are all attached to these battery types of objects and actually power the AI machine itself, including a whole bunch of robots that kind of keep order in the world. So what I'm getting by that, if you look at today's day and age, you can actually look at the world we live in, and you can say January 6th on one side of the equation was an absolute disgrace. It actually was, according to some people, worse than 9/11. It was one of the greatest tragedies, the greatest violations of our democracy in our history of our nation of for 250 years. On the other side of the equation, you got a lot of people who say, bullshit. Yeah, there was some bad shit that happened. It was bad news. There was definitely some doors being busted out. But look at all the footage of this QAnon shaman being walked around the actual Capitol building, just actually minding his own business. And there's actually even a footage now of him saying, hey, just heard from Trump, do not do anything violent, right? So now you can say there's a cherry picking here and there, but if you go to Twitter, you literally see that there's two kinds of worldviews and a bunch of stuff in between. The other thing I wanted to mention, and maybe this is just worth reading, is there seems to be a sense of a movement to transhumanism and a nihilistic worldview where we're actually looking at being less human and being more binary. And this is a huge thing in terms of the transgenderism movement, if you ask me, because people are now using their mind to determine the nature of who they are, as opposed to their physical bodies, right? There's something going on in certain categories of folks. And some people call it body dysmorphia. There's a lot of other things going on, but what I'm getting at is there's a lot of movement, it seems to me, towards VR and AI. And if you think about, augmented reality, there's a push to having an environment that is not real. So I sent you a link to an article where you see a guy online and he's absolutely depressed. All he sees, he's living with his parents. He's depressed. He wants to kill himself. And all he sees when he goes online, especially with TikTok, is beautiful men, beautiful women. Everybody's perfect. And he knows that that's not right. So there you go, right? You actually almost have, an evidence of this long thread where you can actually see there's something wrong with the world. There's a groaning, if you want to go to Romans, right? If you go to the Bible, all of creation is groaning. And I feel like we're reaching a tipping point where something's got to break through. And I don't know what that is, but that's my idea so far of fleshing this idea out.
But the thesis you have is that we are in a simulation.
Yes.
Yeah.
You said in your notes,
you said in your notes that it comes from a Twitter post. Tell me the story of that.
Yeah. So you've got this guy who basically makes the premise that everything on the modern internet is effectively fake. And he got this because he was looking at a guy that he saw, I think, on a Substack or something like that. He's a college dropout, slave tier at a job warehouse, 7,000 saved, 0 talents, qualifications. This guy has basically lived his life as a nobody, and he's looking at the summation of his life, and it's worthless. So nihilism is where you go down this path if we continue on this, right? So this guy talks about, all you see are extremes. Women are attractive. Day in the life, shows a 24 graduate who lives a life that only can be described in modern fairy tale. Everything that they're being exposed to on this thread talks about, they're dichotomies, like everybody else has it and you don't. But the end of the story is that there needs to be an awakening to show him that things are better, right? And so what I'm trying to get at, and maybe I didn't, there's a lot to digest and there's a lot to even kind of postulate. But the real question is, how can we prove that we're not in a simulation, for instance, right? Because we don't really know what happens when we die fully yet. And we don't really know, like, when we do things, the nihilist says that it's all meaningless, right? So it'd be like if you're in a simulation and you're hooked to a battery, if you're in the matrix, you realize that you've got this idea of how life is supposed to be, you go through it, and then I guess when the machines are done with you, you just perish, right? I think that there's a lot of people out there who believe that that's the kind of environment we live in, that everything external we're seeing is a creation of what things should look like. And whether it's China creating, you know, algorithms in TikTok that serve up to you, or something else is going on, it appears that there's this dichotomy that existed in the Matrix that is real today.
Have you heard about the kid at Harvard who killed himself for nihilism as an outcome?
Did I send you that text as well?
Is that the one you sent
That's
me?
the one.
Did you send me that?
Oh yeah, I did.
Well,
Yeah,
the
that's
Twitter one is a
additional.
little bit different because it's talking about the concept of a simulation. But what's your concern? Let's go down a rabbit hole. What is your concern if we live in a simulation? What's the fear of that? Like, what's the possibility? Because you and I have talked about this before.
Yeah.
I believe we are in a simulation.
You do.
But we choose
Truly.
it. Yeah, we choose it. Yes. We choose to live this life before we lived this life. That's my gut instinct, because that makes the most sense of how, it takes away the question of theodicy, which is ultimately, God, why do you allow me to suffer? That, I think, is the question every human being wrestles with. And so, but if we choose this life, then it potentially has more meaning. And then the purpose of life is to discover that meaning or purpose. Because I think a lot of people are now realizing you do have a purpose. You just have to find it. And nihilism takes the other approach. And that's what the kid at Harvard did, is he basically said, oh, if I really do believe in nihilism, that there is nothing, death is actually the most liberating action I can take. I don't think you and I are actually there. I like my life. I want to create meaning out of my life. So what is the tension? Because when you shared that with me, you were in kind of a moment of tension and a half a bottle of wine, I think. And you were honest. It's like, hey, sometimes it feels like the world is going to shit. If it's a simulation, does it matter?
Well, so I think that this is where we have to look at something core in our soul, in our heart, what guides us, right? So for Neo, there was something going on that said, no, this isn't right, and there's something wrong with this, right? Cypher was more than willing to go back in, outside from being in the real world, understanding what the consequences were, and wanted to go back in, be digitally set up again to betray his own people. I think in our heart of hearts,
that's naivete. To go back to naivete,
it is. It's to go back to.
In other words, is naivete not knowing you're in a simulation better, or would you rather know you're in a simulation?
I would rather know I'm in a simulation, because
why?
There's always a striving. If it's the easy way out is to be in the simulation. It's the path of least resistance. Now, maybe that's also nihilistic, right? Because again, it's the most liberating, at least according to that. I mean, the question really is like, if you had a terrible life and you were in a coma and you were in an accident, so you were beaten as a kid, starved your whole life, drugs, violence, and then you get hit, and then you're in a coma, but you've got this peaceful dream for the rest of your life until they unplug you. Is that good? And the question really comes down to is, well, what does it matter if it's individual, right? And I think ontologically, if we look at it from a 30,000 foot, or what God would really want, I don't think God would really want that. If there was an option.
But what do you want? What do you want?
I want.
Like, what does knowing it's a simulation give you?
Well, knowing it's a simulation gives me the ability to see how it could be
different.
Well, different.
Can you change the simulation?
Well, that's the question, right? I mean, Morpheus has this prophecy. He's got the machine, the oracle gave him some insights that said things are going to be okay, that there is going to be a way. And Neo goes through 5 or 6 iterations of complete destruction and recycling all over again to end up at the one place again where he finally sees something different, right? This is kind of maybe what we all hope for. All of us who've gone through life in terms of struggle or addiction or relationships always tries to figure a way, how did I screw up here, and what can I do to get to that next level to get better? In your case, where it's the God imagination, we somehow have this revealing that we've always been in the circle and God has always loved us. We've actually pushed ourselves away, right? When Jesus died on the cross, as you say, that was not God's wrath served up against humanity and our Jesus. It's what we needed in order to feel good about where our own consciousness was, right? The Jesus's death on the cross, in your view, of course, was that it was for our own purposes, not just in terms of a substitute or a wrath or a punishment for the sin that we've done, but rather to say, this is going to make us feel better. We need a scapegoat. We need a victim, right? And the question
What's
and the
the
answer, yeah.
what's the tension of living with a simulation? Like, because your conversation that we had earlier about the simulation, I mean, we've had probably 100 conversations around simulation, but I think it's a great topic to open up and start with because it's sort of the general tension with life. Are we actually in control of this life? Because the simulation discusses the concept of fate. Am I in control or not?
Mhm.
And where do you think you land? You're in control or you're not in control?
I would say that if I were to lean towards one side of it or not, I would
Hmm.
say I'm less in control than I wanted to be, right? When I look at my life and I look at the things that I've, tried to accomplish, vis-a-vis the light of what success looks like, right? When you look at a
Hmm.
materialistic, financial, other kinds of scenarios, you say, I
Hmm.
think I could have done better, right? And so there's a little bit of regret there. But I mean, I'm trying to learn the idea that you only live in the present moment, that the regret
Hmm.
doesn't do you any good. Regret in getting a tattoo and stopping the next tattoo is probably a different kind of regret. And there's a guy named Marshall Goldsmith, who's one of the greatest executive coaches, who talks about like keeping regret in the rear view mirror. It can cause pain and suffering and fomentation, right? It
Hmm.
can cause despair. That's what this kid has. This kid has regret, right? He has regret. He's completely bought off on the idea that his life is worthless, right? He's got a shotgun. This is the one that not your well, the guy that I'm talking about online right now, who is a college dropout or whatever, makes weak money, lives with his parents. He is in the same mental state as the guy who from Harvard, the brilliant guy who already killed
Hmm.
himself, right, many years ago. So I think what I'm trying to get at is, um, how do I get to myself in a headspace that literally, I mean, people talk about faking it till you make it. How do you get yourself into a headspace where you can actually manifest the idea that you are going to be fine, and that almost faking it turns into something when you align your thoughts, like our friend, the book we're reading, when you kind of align your heart and your mind to that same place, maybe that's what it takes to break through,
Hmm.
right? So,
See, you and I have talked about this a long time. I have come to the conclusion, and I think I've landed. I don't think and a lot of this. So, one quick thought: you had mentioned the God Imagination. So, for those who are listening, it's a book I wrote about 13 years ago now called "Discovering the God Imagination." And I'm not going to go down that tangent right now. So I just wanted to make sure listeners knew what that was. But it's a very specific way of thinking that I've come to the conclusion that we aren't in control, that everything is fate, everything is pre-scripted because we chose it that way. Or it's the thrill, like Alan Watts talked about, of the unknown dream. Like you want to have it so that it's thrilling. And I think that's a central part of being life is the discovery of what you don't know. We don't know anything that's going to happen in the future, but we always experience it in the now. And so when it happens, it's are we prepared to deal with it? And I think at the end of the day, what I've come to terms with is the only thing that matters in the present right now that really, really matters. Like if we get what we want or don't, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. What's really matters is my judgment of myself in that moment.
mhm.
And that's the only thing that we truly can control. We can control our thoughts, especially about people, first to myself, and then to all those people that I interact with. And that life is ultimately most valuable when we find the capacity that, even if it is a simulation, to say, I'm still worth it. I'm still good. I still have value and I can still contribute to the world. Because if we don't believe that one thing, I don't think we can do anything effectively. Everything revolves around our dignity and our self-perception. And that we can't, that's the one thing that scripture kind of talks about in the Garden of Eden, where we do actually have a choice. Everything else, they just show up to. But if we judge ourselves as good or evil in the moment at any time, because that can waver, that can change, that can, and that's why if we're sitting in the idea of we're in a simulation, it's like, well, I got fucked. Like, like when I lost my job at Charles Schwab, I got wrongfully terminated. But that's life. How are
Yeah.
you going to handle it?
Mhm.
And that's the hard part about the concept of a simulation is sometimes it's a roller coaster that sucks.
Mhm.
And how do we learn as human beings to deal with it?
So it sounds to me that according to you, that it
Mhm.
doesn't matter if we're in a simulation or not.
No,
Because technically, I mean, you believe that we are actually already in our own simulation. Now, what's
I do.
interesting is that that version of the simulation isn't necessarily hooked up to a machine and turning us into batteries. That's a different kind of a
No,
simulation, right?
no,
We've
no.
created our own
Yes.
simulation, our own idea, and it's a perception that we are inherently broken or wrong, and we're not really fully loved by God, at least a lot of us. And once we
Like
break through that, realize
yeah,
that,
yeah, I
then
don't
we see.
care. But sorry, go ahead, finish.
No, 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 that's it. I was just trying to.
I don't care if the Garden of Eden is true. I care if the narrative of you are here for freedom and joy and to discover. Like if you really listen to what like I don't know if Genesis, the creation story in Genesis is true or real, but I know it communicates deeply insightful things.
Mhm.
And
It's true,
one
and
of the
it's
things,
true in that regard that what it's trying to express is real.
yes,
We're
yes,
not asking for scientific kind of,
right. I don't care. Yeah.
exactly right.
I'm way past that. I don't need that anymore. I don't need
Yes,
it to be real. I just need it to be true. Because in
exactly.
true, it tells me you are worth it and you have freedom, but you're going to encounter life. Like I think the tree of knowledge is the here and now, every single moment of our life. That's what I think. That's what I discovered is it's a simulation, but in every single moment, you only have really one question that makes sense is are you good or are you evil? That's the only thing that you have control over. And life is going to throw you through the blender. You know, going back to when I lost my job at Charles Schwab, my world was wrecked because of my expectation. Oh, I had this new path. I'd only been there 2 months. It was a freaking phenomenal job. And then boom, the rug got pulled out from under me.
But you didn't think you
And
were evil in that fall, in that
no, but I
termination.
wondered because the natural inclinations of negative events is God, where the fuck are you?
Of course,
Are
this is as
you
old as
still
Job.
that's the
Old as
theodicy
Job.
question.
Yep.
And so and guess what? That always happens in the here and now. It doesn't happen in the future, it doesn't happen in the past. It happens in the here and now. When I remember being on the train when I got the call and saying, you're being released from your contract. They no longer want you to work. You're done. Don't come to work tomorrow. And I was like, oh, life just threw me a
Wow.
fastball. And I remember we were going to a Luke Bryan concert at Shoreline, and I show up and I'm with some friends. My sister happened to be there. And I was like, holy shit. And in previous lives, I would have been like, oh my God, the world's burning. You don't love me. God doesn't love me. But in that moment, because I wasn't 12, I was 53 at the time, I think, or 51. Um, I wasn't starting from scratch. At that moment, I was able to say, okay, God, you threw me in the blender, but maybe there's something to learn here. And that's how we transpose what we think is evil into good. Is we take it, we wrestle with it, we sit with it, we breathe with it, we let it run through our body like holy shit. And then we realize, oh my God, the universe actually knows what it's doing in my life in the simulation because guess what? I always come out. If I stick with this idea that I am still valuable in that moment, this energy is created inside of me that says you can make it through it.
Yeah.
And that to me is what makes life worth living. And I honestly, I don't ever want to go through that experience again. I don't seek those experiences out. I don't
Mm,
seek negative experiences out. What I'm actually learning now through a lot of people in my life, especially on Instagram that I'm learning about, is the idea of creating controlled negative experiences. Like the new big thing is ice baths.
exactly.
I'm intrigued by it, but you're putting your body in a state of holy shit, this is really, I haven't done it yet. I want to do it because I'm training my body to handle stress in a controlled environment so that when I'm in a stress moment, like getting fired, I um, can handle it.
Yeah. And that's why we do
That's what I'm
meditation
learning.
too, right? Yeah.
Totally.
Plug for both Pete's Coffee for Ethiopian Supernatural, which comes out 2 months before it did today, and then for Ice Pod. Ice Pod, I just bought an Ice Pod.
You
Um,
did?
yeah, so it's
Sweet.
so you can spend a lot of money on these baths, and
Yes.
you can use a lot of ice, and this is very cheap. It was $150, and it's
Have you done it
insulated.
yet?
It's going to be arriving in the next couple of weeks, and I've had
Why
some
did you
terrible
do that?
inflammation. I did it mostly because I was tired of the inflammation that I've had in my elbows, some kind of pre-arthritis. I don't know what it is, but no matter what I do, I can't get away from it. And so this is a tangent, we'll just say for now, putting
No, I
ourselves
think
in
this is
tough
actually a
places.
really good tangent. Finish this because I have my side of that. Go ahead.
Well, no, the side of this is when you decide to go and take the red pill, you are choosing the ice bath. You are
Hmm.
choosing the
Yeah.
glop. You're choosing
Hmm.
real pain and death, and you're
Yes.
choosing kind of an unknown. And it's because there's something in you that says this will be better. Now, again, ice bath is just a microcosm of this, and it's probably
Hmm.
very inconsequential in terms of greater like salvation of humanity. That's what Neo's
Hmm.
trying to do. But I think like if we think about atomic habits, it's one of those things, right? So we look at things like meditation, which can at first be really challenging, right? Oh my God, I've been doing this for 20, 15 minutes and I can't focus on my breath, right? And then you realize those last
Hmm.
five, you break through. Ice
Hmm.
bath the same way. And in fact, you learn not only to spend 2 or 3 or 4 minutes there, but it gets easier every time. And then the benefits are supposed to be incredible, right? Flexibility, brown fat that helps you with your mitochondria, mood,
Hmm.
dopamine, etc.
Yep.
So it's not just a fad. I think it really has done some amazing things. So I think that choosing the red pill and going down those things that stress us, train us, and prepare us for what the world gives us is in our own way our ability to be the best version of ourselves in that space, regardless of whether we're in a simulation or not.
Hmm. Exactly.
Yeah.
Like we can't determine, I can't determine if I'm actually in a simulation. Although I think people who have taken like DMT and ayahuasca would absolutely say, yes, we're in a simulation because you realize you can step out of it.
Right.
But normal 99.999% of life, you don't get evidence whether or not it's really, you have to make a decision. And what I'm learning, back to my point about what my side is, I just finished a 60-day intermittent fasting, and I'm going to keep going.
Nice. Good.
And I lost 30 pounds.
60 days. And
And
did you do the 8 hours where you go from 12
I
to
know
8?
I did 12 to 6. We would
6 hour
usually have dinner
window.
around 6. Yeah, it was typically 6 to 7 hours. So I would not eat. So my regimen was simple. I would wake up, I would have a glass of water
Mhm.
because water doesn't break the fast. And
Correct.
and you need to replenish your water supply. That's the thing is I realized, frick, I am so dehydrated. I am so dehydrated. So I would start with a glass of water. That's become a practice. I cut out coffee. I was doing tea for a while, but I realized tea gets boring to me. I love coffee, but water actually was more fulfilling. Then I would wait until noon. At noon, I would have a protein shake, and I think that's the thing that contributed most to my fat loss. Is my body was getting the nutrient. I love carbs. I'm a terrible eater. I love to cook, and so I'm always indulging. And by but what I did is intermittent fasting put my body into a stress state during those 18 hours. So my protein shake would never fill me up. And it was a big one. It was muscle milk, protein powder, banana, and sugar free chocolate. And that would carry me. But what happened is that I would get to dinner, and in the first week, I was fairly, um, I was okay, but I was like, yeah, this is tough. And then I would have my dinner, and I am a massive snacker. Like,
Mm.
I love going to my pantry at 8 o'clock at night and having 2 chips and 3 chocolate covered raisins and a piece of salami. I graze really tiny pieces, but it adds up almost to a full meal. And I cut all that out. And then I would go to bed, and all of a sudden, after about 14 days, I started sleeping a lot better. And I lost
Mm.
10 pounds in the first 3 days because it was all
Wow.
inflammation. That's well, it's all inflammation. Inflammation comes from too much sugars in your system. That's just the
Mm.
reality. And I had been inflaming my body for 25 years.
Well, on my
And
side, it could be alcohol too, because I don't eat a lot of
totally.
sweets. I don't, I mean, I'll have some dark chocolate, right?
Yeah,
But
but
yeah,
Cabernet is just straight sugar, bro. It's like, and that's what I did. I also cut out alcohol a lot. I still eat alcohol on Saturday nights because I enjoy it
yep,
with my friends. I didn't
yep.
want to go militant. I wanted to do this in a healthy way. And the most important thing I think I did is I began that intermittent fast by saying, I'm worth it.
Mm.
And believe it or not, I never really struggled. And I wonder why in post response, is that what gave me the true energy? I started with this idea that I am 55 years old and I've never done anything like this. And I like the idea of fasting is not my lifestyle. I but you know what I can honestly say after 60 days, all of a sudden I started fasting, and which is a stress on the body. That's what it
Hmm.
is.
Yeah.
I lost 30 pounds now. This morning or yesterday morning, I weighed myself, I was
Congratulations.
222 and I
Amazing.
started at 255. And I'm like, maybe there is something to this idea of stressing your body as a productive process.
Yes.
And I think getting back to the simulation, it's like, if we are, can we still make the simulation work for us? Because that was Alan Watts' idea of, God is having a dream. And in the dream, it's always going to be a little bit of a close shave. You're like, oh, I got through that one. But that's what makes life thrilling. That's what makes, like, now Charles Schwab let me go. And 2 months later, I ended up finding the best job I've ever had. So things, we never know in the moment what we is really going to happen in the future. But in that moment, if I'm beating the shit out of myself and I'm like, you suck because it was all your fault, and we run to guilt and shame, I'm realizing that doesn't work. That doesn't work.
Mm.
It's finding the grace in the moment to say, no, one, I'm good, I'm worth it. Even if this is in a simulation, how do I make the most of it? It begins with dignity. It begins with going back to the tree of knowledge and saying, no, life is shitty, but it is still worth it because I'm worth it. And in that moment, I can make meaning out of virtually any negative event because the only thing that really matters is my dignity and how I self perceive myself. Can I love myself in that moment? And when I can love myself in any moment, I can get through absolutely anything. When I lose sight of my dignity, that's when everything goes haywire.
I love that example. And what you actually do is you firm up this point with I mentioned atomic habits earlier. One of the things that when you're trying to do is create a new habit or break an old one is there's three methodologies to it, right? There's outcomes, there's process, and there's being. And the reason why so many people fail is they focus only on the outcomes. They focus
Mm-hmm,
on losing a pound or two, or
mm-hmm,
they do a process, but they don't think about where they're going to be. So in terms of where Mr. Clear comes from in this book, he says, I am a non-smoker. If you're trying to quit, you ontologically call yourself a non-smoker. You don't talk about, I'm trying to not to smoke anymore. In your
mm-hmm,
case, you valued your being, I'm worth this.
mm-hmm.
That is what anchored you to help you get through all of the discomfort of the stomach, the lack of
Yeah.
energy, all these types of things.
Mhm.
And you look at the ontological, the being. I mean, we all know that metaphysics,
Right.
being, ontology is the highest level, right?
Mhm.
Before Abraham was, I am, right? Jesus says that in John 8:58. He's going back to what Yahweh said to Moses. Who should I say, sent me? I am that I
Mhm.
am. I
Mhm.
am, I am the essence, right? And so when you can anchor to that true nature, you're going to be able to overcome any kind of, and you could call it spin, or you don't call it spin, but like dignity, you could say
Mhm.
dignity too, right? So I think it's brilliant. You did that. I don't know if you read Atomic Habits, but you did it.
Oh, I love that book.
Of course. Okay, good. So yeah, you're right there, and that's why you were successful. But you also did something crazier. Most people start that are beginners with intermittent fasting go maybe 12 hours on, 12 hours off, or they'll do the 12 to 8, which is 8 hours of eating and a 16-hour window of not eating. You went advanced. You went 6 hours, 6 hour window. And then within that
I
6 hour window, it's not like, hey, let's gorge on In-N-Out Burger, pizza,
right.
whatever. It's like, no, start off with that shake. And I think so
Well,
it's
here's the
important for you.
balance.
Yeah.
Here's the balance of that though, is that was why the protein shake was really a good transition for me because I've never done protein shakes in my life.
Okay.
Okay. But it
Yeah.
created this good middle balance between giving my body these really good proteins and as long as I didn't cheat in the window, the 18-hour window, I could and I had that shake for lunch, I could pretty much enjoy some light snacking in the middle of the afternoon and then anything I wanted for dinner.
For dinner.
I
Yeah,
could
I love
have
it.
carb. I wasn't really technically doing keto in that. I was because I cut out a lot of carbs, but I was eating normal, healthy meals. And if I wanted to have potatoes, if I wanted to have potato chips or heavy beans or anything that's high carb, it didn't matter.
No, of
As
course not.
long as because my body was saying you're not overloading me. It was always about balance. It wasn't about stopping consumption because I've done keto. Keto's hard.
It's terrible.
When you really remove carbs so much, you lose the value. I love food. Like that's the thing as my life opens up more and more every day as I begin staying on this course, I'm realizing, damn, I love food. But I don't
Mm.
need food to go like I would have the thing that I would do is that's another thing is I literally cut my calorie intake in half by doing this. That was probably the most important thing.
Calorie deprivation. Absolutely.
Yes, but I didn't cut out the things that were meaningful from a flavor standpoint. Like I started getting on Instagram and we were learning how to cook meals, and I was cooking all these incredible dishes, and they were indulgent, but I wasn't having 2 or 3 servings.
Mm.
Like I realized, and that kind of dovetails. This is a total tangent, but I'm going to bring it back around. This last year, so this is for the listeners. This last 8 years, I was in survival mode, and
Mm.
last year was about me coming out of that survival mode. And what I realized is that I stuffed my face. Like every time I would eat till I was full, like full, and I was getting way too many calories. And I realized I was doing that because I was depressed. I had been
Mhm.
living in this survival mode, and eating was a way of making me feel good.
Mhm.
So I was destroying the thing that I love because food is so damn good. But I
Mhm.
don't need 3 servings of it. And I'm
Mhm.
not fat by any means. I'm 6'3" and I can carry weight, but damn, now I feel so much better being 30
Yeah.
pounds lighter.
Yeah.
And so it ultimately comes down to I think this is a stimulation or a simulation, but it's so then what? How do we live in this simulation? And it goes back to because I love the Matrix conversation because I think that's ultimately what was it Jesus who said it was Jesus who Paul said, "Be in the world, but not of the world."
Yeah.
The
Paul
Matrix
in
is the world.
Corinthians,
Yeah,
Colossians. Yeah,
it's Paul. It's Apostle
it
Paul.
is.
It's
Yep, to the Colossians.
it's we are living in the Matrix, which is the world, but don't live in the world because the world checks out. That's the only way
Mhm.
to really deal with the suffering of life is just to check out. You get numb, you close down your heart. I don't want to do that. I like
Right.
life. I want life to be vibrant. I want life to be exciting. I want life to be thrilling. But I realize the thing that does the best at helping me get through that is to hold on to this idea that I am worth it.
Hmm.
And the more that I do that, living in the simulation doesn't hurt as much.
100%.
Yeah. I think that's
That's
it,
good.
dude. I think that was the first episode.
Yeah.
That was freaking phenomenal. I liked how this went a lot.
Yeah. Me
I
too.
really do. So, any final closing thoughts?
No, I think it was a good first start. We're going
It
to
was.
continue to work through this. I think we'll have some, I love the idea at the heart of it. If we want to summarize, believe in your own dignity. If you're gonna make it through this world, you have to start with your own relationship to God, the universe, and the dignity that you have. You cannot, you can't love others until you love yourself, right? That's a pretty
Yes.
common phrase, right? How else to do that? And then to, again, a byproduct of that is to put yourself in the situations where you can challenge yourself so that you can be prepared for the things that come at you, to keep that dignity intact. The world, or whatever, is maybe the enemy, is trying to deplete us of our dignity. This poor guy online, both the guy who killed himself and the guy who's living with his parents, the dignity is gone, the hope is gone. That needs to be reinvigorated. And if we come together and we start having these conversations with ourselves, with community, with a greater group of people, and we have a consciousness that understands this, that's when we're going to be able to change the world. And we need it. We need it badly right now.
And I think that goes back to your first point about simulation, is sometimes the world just looks like it's going to hell in a handbasket. And it's hard. It's because there's a lot of evidence that the simulation still sucks. And when we swim against that stream, it's a better way of living, because it's easy to get sucked into depression. And I don't want that.
How do we look at Silicon Valley Bank's collapse, right?
Oh
And
my
look at
God.
that as a distraction.
Another conversation.
Total
Another
distraction.
conversation. Oh my God. Maybe we should save that for next one.
We will.
The downfall of capitalism. So so brother, it was awesome. This was perfect. To the listeners out there, thank you for joining us. This has been a wonderful first experience, because I really feel like you guys got a flavor of the best of us. So much love to everyone out there. Thank you for listening to the Grow Podcast. We love you, and we'll see you soon.